Hello, everyone.
Hi there, folks.
This is Amanda.
This is Rita.
And you're listening to
I Don't Know Her.
the podcast where we talk about women
And some other folks.
that you've probably never heard of.
But today you will.
And we're on brand new equipment.
We are.
Thank you to our Patreon subscribers.
This is really cool.
This
is really
cool.
nice. We feel fancy. Pinky's out right now.
We should have like a little cup of tea. We are the fanciest bitches who've ever podcasted now. I hope when you guys hear this at home in your headphones or whatever, that you're like, yeah, I can hear a difference. If you don't, it's a credit to our editor, Lucas McIntyre, who's been making us sound really good on some pretty cheap equipment.
Well, this is really nice to have the upgrade. And so thank you so much for, supporting us and our little venture here that we really love doing.
Yeah, we really do.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but like even those $3 a month, it adds up. It's taken us, a year and a half to get to the point where we can buy this new equipment, but it's worth it. And we're really excited to have it. So thank you to everyone. We're also looking for some great ideas for things you might want as perks as Patrons, in addition to the stuff we've already been offering. So if you have ideas, please send them our way.
Alrighty. So you have a topic.
I do, which I have not shared at all with Rita because I wanted it to be like a feel you out, see what you think.
Oh, no, I hate that when you do that.
So, have you ever had a female boss?
Yes. A couple.
Have you had a good one?
Good in what way? Like a supportive and like...
Whatever way you define what a good boss is.
Thinking.
Yikes.
Yeah, I've actually had quite a few female bosses. I would have to say no.
No, you've never had a good one?
No, not in for what I need as an employee.
Yeah. So what is it that you need that has been lacking in your female bosses?
My very first job, I worked at a gym and it was owned by two women. I had done nothing but volunteer work till that point.
And you told us about this, I think.
Yeah, and this was my first, I was going to be a receptionist. This was my first, desk job, I guess I should say. And so when I was talking about my volunteer work, I used to organize a bunch of stuff. I volunteered in offices, so I knew how to do this stuff. I knew how to answer phones. I knew how to cold call. But when I was in the interview, the lady literally rolled her eyes at me while I was talking.
Yeah, because all you'd had was quote unquote volunteer experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember you talking about that.
Yeah.
So once you got the job.
They were very just distant. Yeah. Not, I had a feeling like they didn't even want to be there. So they were like, here, just put this girl up front and she'll take care of it. Which I did a good job. I was there for a year and a half, I think, until I ended up moving to Spokane. I've had another female boss that I thought was terrible.
Yeah. I've had a few that were not great. I have one right now, and I complain about her quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I realized this weekend that I think I complain about her more because I have internalized misogyny. She's actually extremely competent. She does a really good... She actually, she is a part of a leadership team. Mm-hmm. All of the other people on the leadership team are men. Mm-hmm. She does twice as much as every single one of them. Period. Hands down. If I want something done, if I need an answer to a question, I go to her. Mm-hmm. Period. There's no way I would go to the others unless, it's approving my leave or something. Then I would go to her boss, right? But if I need help with something or if I need an answer to a question, then she's the one I need to go to. Yeah. Because she's the only one who will take care of the problem or answer my questions.
Yeah. When I say terrible, terrible to the point where there were employees that would sit in their car and cry for 30 minutes before they would have to go to work.
Yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about. And that is the definition of a bad boss.
Yeah. It was... They were hurting people, making it a very uncomfortable environment.
I guess I'm really having a tough time with trying to sift through, like, I have legitimate criticisms of my female boss, you know, and my friend, I was talking to my friend about this. I was like, okay, so I'm starting to realize that I'm much harder on her than I am on these male bosses. And I can't tell if that's because of internalized misogyny or if, like, they're valid criticisms or whatever, or if it's a combination. And my friend was like, you know what I think it is? She was like, because I think I do the same thing. She was like, it's because we know she's capable of being good.
Oh.
And so we have a tendency to be harder on her when she doesn't live up to our expectations. And I thought about that in terms of, like, what we always talk about on the show, which is, like, this double standard that ends up happening to women who are achieving great things. Like, men can be less good at something.
They can be messy.
And like, they can be complicated and they can be contradictory, and we can still respect them and see them as good bosses and things like that, or good leaders. And I do view her as a good boss and a good leader, but I have been particularly hard on her this first week that I've been back at school.
Ooh.
Because she didn't respond to my emails as quickly as I thought she should. But she's been working really hard to try to get my pronouns right and my name correct.
That's refreshing.
And the reason I know that is because the friend I reached out to be like, hey, what do you think my problem is? Was like, hey, I'm going to share these texts with you just so you know that this person is trying. And it was like, hey, I saw that, you know, they signed their name at this email such as this. What does that mean? Do they want me to call them something different? Should I call them this now? Like, how do I address them? And my friend was like, well, you should probably ask them, which seems like obvious.
Yeah.
But I appreciated that she was reaching out and, like, legitimately wanted to know how to be better and do better. I guarantee none of my fucking male bosses have even noticed that I'm signing my name differently on my emails.
So do you think she's a bad boss?
No.
No?
No, I think that she's terrific at a lot of things. I get extremely frustrated with her sometimes, though. Because she can do things that are like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why are you so good so much of the time and then you do something really dumb or short-sighted? Like, I'll give you an example. There was a time when a student wrote something on a paper that was homophobic and it was directed at me. And when that student got sent to the office, the response was, well, he has a right to free speech.
Oof.
But if that same student had wrote like something like, mixed meat is a cunt, we would all know that that was inappropriate for school and he would be in trouble.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean when I talk about, like, sometimes I'm frustrated. Like, that was the wrong answer.
Yeah.
And I want you to be better.
I understand that disappointment. Yeah. Because you would just wish, you hope for better.
It's like how I feel when I find out, like, a gay person is a Republican.
Yeah.
It's like, you need to be better.
Or you're a Latino that voted for Trump. Like, yeah. I don't get it.
What is your problem?
So disappointed in you. You can do better.
Don't do that. I just think it's interesting that I think that everyone, regardless of gender, is harder on a female boss and more critical and keeps those mistakes and holds on to them and thinks about them. Like, every time, you know, my female boss makes a mistake, I guarantee there is a running list in people's head of like, oh, there it is again.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is again. And I think that's unique to having a female boss.
And I am a female boss. I wonder if my staff thinks I'm not a good boss.
I'd wonder that.
I would wonder that.
You know, what's funny about this female boss is I just realized that she reached out to me last year. We were doing this training, and she had a separate training, and had in the training, it had asked them to, like, reach out to a staff member for honest feedback on how they're doing at their job. And she picked me to ask. I like responded. I was like, hey, I'll spend some time on this. And I did think about it, but I didn't know how to respond because she does have a tendency to not take criticism well.
Well, who does?
Yeah, same. So I just never responded. I just basically pretended I got too busy and forgot, but I didn't forget. I knew that I had this
You just had no answer.
And I just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Because my criticisms would have been something like, sometimes I feel like you don't give a shit about minorities.
Whoa.
That would be my criticism. Obviously, I would say it nicer, but like, that's my primary problem with her.
I totally get to what you're saying about holding women to a different standard, because I had worked for a female executive chef, and everyone was like, oh, she's such a bitch, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what if she was a man? I would always tell myself that. I was like, yeah, she's screaming at me and embarrassing me right now, but what if she was a man? Would I question her screaming at me and embarrassing? Like, I was like trying to rationalize it.
Right. Like, it's not an acceptable form of behavior, but if she were male, would it have been more normal?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore less like in people's mind as a thing to criticize? Yeah, probably.
Because I had another like male executive chef that would yell at people and like point his chef's knife at people while he was yelling. That's very aggressive and hostile. But it's like, you know, when she would yell, they would say more about her than they would about him.
Yeah, that seems accurate to my own experiences. I hope we get to a point where we're not like that anymore as a society, but I think it's going to take a really fucking long time.
Probably.
So I just wanted to like bring that to your attention and my attention and to our listeners' attention, because I think that it is a thing we all need to work on to be better at.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, I have a story for you.
You do?
About a female badass.
Okay.
I'm ready. Have you ever heard of Margo Oberg?
No, I haven't.
I didn't think so.
I don't know her.
She was the first woman to become a professional surfer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So before I even get to Margo's story, I'm going to take you back.
Okay. Close my eyes.
I'm going to take you all the way back to season 1, episode 15.
Oh, geez. What EP was that? Who was that? I don't even know who that was. We had 2. I know that for sure.
Because season 1, we worked way too hard. I'll just say that. You talked about Princess Kailani.
Oh, yeah.
Did I say that right?
I guess Kailani?
Kailani, I think. Do you remember her?
Yes.
Can you give us like the briefest of rundown of what you remember about her?
Well, she was the last official like royal person in Hawaii. There was this massive coup that had to do with just wiping out these islands because of consumerism.
Yeah, dole.
And yeah, fucking dole. And, you know, British interest and all that stuff and American interest. And so like kind of the absorption of these islands and then basically stealing the throne out from underneath her. She ended up getting pretty ill and she died very young.
Yeah, like 27.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring up Princess Kailani is because surfing was very much part of the culture of indigenous Hawaiians and other Pacific Islander cultures. And it was a pursuit that was like very egalitarian. It meant women surfed, men surfed, Two-Spirit folks surfed. And it wasn't like men could do these things and women could do these things. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was egalitarian. Surfing was just a thing. And it was also sometimes a courtship ritual where 2 surfers would go out on boards and they would have like a little rendezvous in the water. So
it's one way to do it.
So surfing was like a big deal to Hawaiians in general. When she arrived back in Hawaii, because remember she got sent away to school in Europe. That was like a big part of her story.
Yeah, and she also was speaking on behalf of her people. She was doing like a lot of social engagements.
Yeah, so she was in Europe being educated, and then she heard basically that they were, you know, dismantling the throne. And that's when she came back to the U.S. and tried to, like, you know, make a case for why she should not be dethroned, basically. So when she returned back to Hawaii, the colonizers had basically removed surfing from the daily lives of Hawaiians. So they were no longer surfing.
How do you remove it?
You prevent it, you prohibit it.
Jeez. Okay.
Because they were, like, in control. And they were like, surfing is prohibited. You can't do it. So no one was surfing anymore. But she had actually carried her surfboard to Europe and was, like, surfing on the coast of England.
Holy crap.
So when she came back, she had her surfboard with her. And I guess her surfboard was like 50 fucking pounds. It was really heavy.
Oh, that's heavy duty.
And the colonizers wanted her to stop surfing. And she was like, nope. She refused. And she rode what they called a long olo board made of willy willy hardwood. And it was one of the last traditional native surfers at Waikiki. And historians believe that Princess Keolani is who saved surfing from cultural extinction for Native Hawaiians and allowed it to continue on the islands. Without her, it might have completely died off.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
As white people then traveled to and from Hawaii, because it was now this colonized place, and as Hawaiian representatives began to travel to other parts of the U.S., there was a duke who I believe was like her nephew. I can't really remember how he was related to her, but he like would travel to the coasts of California, New Jersey, and Florida, and he was a big surfer, and he started to introduce surfing to these coastal cultures in the mainland. So now it became this fun pastime in the U.S. This is a very, very, very brief, succinct.
I mean, this was probably over a few decades, right?
Oh, hundreds of years.
Geez. Years.
Yes. Because Keolani, like, saved it in, like, I don't even remember. It was, like, the 1800s. And it was in the 1900s of this duke. Or actually, no, it was in the 1900s when he was going around and traveling and stuff like that. So as colonization and westernization solidified the roles of women, you know, in and out of the house, like, women are allowed to do these things and they're allowed to wear these things and they're not allowed to do these things.
Yeah.
So as that happened, female surfers began to completely disappear because men were surfers.
Okay.
And also the equipment was built and made for men.
Okay.
And there were no longer these, like, I imagine there were still people in, like, Hawaii who were making boards for women. But, like, culturally, that was not a thing that was happening. So there was like not clothing meant for them. They're not surfboards meant for them. It was basically disappearing among women. At the turn of the century, so into the 20th century, the few women who did surf often drowned.
Well, oh my gosh.
Because they were required to wear
No.
a woolen suit.
No.
That weighed an extra 40 pounds when it was wet.
So they, like, were drowned.
Yes.
Yes.
They would get caught in the undertow, and because they were wearing these woolen suits that would pull them, they couldn't get out from underneath the undertow. No matter what they tried, they were just getting pulled. So they would die.
Yeah.
If they tried to surf. Because they'd wear wool suits.
This is like as wild as what we were talking about Annie Smith Peck, and they had to mountain climb in these huge gowns, and they were slipping off of mountainsides and dying.
Yeah, petticoats and high heels are not meant for climbing. And you know what's not meant for surfing?
Wool suits.
So I want you to keep that in mind as we're talking about Margo Godfrey Oberg. Okay. So Margo Godfrey was born on September 8th, 1953 in Pennsylvania. The Godfrey family moved to La Jolla, California, which is like a suburb of San Diego, but it was like hoity-toity. And it was right on the shores. It was on the beach when she was 5. And even in the late 50s, early 60s, which is about this time, La Jolla was a pretty affluent community. Her dad was an aerospace engineer. I think her mom was a housewife, like a homemaker, but there was like no information about her mother or her siblings for that matter. I was like, okay, so I guess the only person who existed in her family was her. It took me 6 sources to find that her dad was an aerospace engineer.
Oh, jeez.
Like, no one wanted to talk about anybody in that family. So I don't know much about her early life as far as her family or education or whatever, but I know that she started out on the water riding rafts and surf mats. I don't even know what that is.
Surf mat.
Yeah.
Well, Have you ever seen those things that people take into the ocean? It's like a rubber mat and you can just lay on it.
Boogie boards?
Kind of, but they're bigger.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know what she was on. Rafts and surf mats. And then she graduated to the longboard at the age of 10.
Nice.
It was at that age that she entered her first contest. She entered a competition for 12-year-old boys.
Oh, jeez. And
she won.
She was allowed to participate?
I guess.
Okay.
She was 2 years younger and she was a girl, but she beat all of them. And in 1964, a professional surfer named Mike Doyle, he was a big deal at the time, he was watching her surf at La Jolla Shores, and he was so impressed with her, he asked if he could coach her. And this is what he said later about witnessing Margo surf on the waves. I said to myself, there's the future women's champion. Margo was the first girl to actually carve turns and link them together. She had a stand-up straight style and dropped low in her stance when she was about to execute a turn or a cutback. She rode like a guy and was the first in my mind to be better than most of the guys. She was also brave.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So she entered I think it's Menahune. I'm not sure how to say it. Championships in 1966 in the 12 and under division, and she was the only girl in the division. And she won it and secured her first national title, and it was just a few weeks before she turned 13.
Oh, wow.
And this championship meant that Margo was now ranked 4th in the world for women surfers.
Wow. Before she was even 13.
Yeah, she's 13, 3 years into her sport, and she is so good that she is ranked 4th in the world.
Wow.
And this ranking qualified her to be a finalist in the 1966 World Contest in San Diego. For the next few years, Margo fucking dominated the surfing world. She won titles in California, Makaha, and the East Coast Surfing Championships, and then won the world title in Puerto Rico. And this was all before she was a freshman in high school.
Wow.
The next season, she won all of the 4 quad rated, it's AAAA rated events. I tried to look up what that meant, but I couldn't find it. And she became the first woman to ever win a cash prize in surfing, and it was at the 1969 Santa Cruz Pro-Am. The prize was a whopping $150.
That's not bad.
Lucas, what is $150 from 1969 worth today?
$150 in 1969 is the equivalent of $1,075.48 in today's dollars.
So Margo was an incredibly competitive person, as you might have already guessed. And
she seems like she's got some drive.
She does. She was really competitive and did not like losing. And she was a real bad loser.
Oh, no.
She had never lost a major contest in her career until 1970 when she was in the World Contest in Australia, and she came in like this close to first place, but she came in second to a woman named Sharon Weber, and she was fucking devastated. She came in
second. She throw a fit?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So she retired.
Whoa, that's taking it a little too hard.
This is what she said about that time. I had to go back to Santa Barbara High School and live through the 11th and 12th grades not being the world champion. People kept asking, what happened? Why didn't you win? The loss was so devastating that I retired. She was, quote, crushed and embarrassed and wanted to hide away.
Oh.
And that's exactly what she did.
That's not, I understand it, but it's like, girl, you gotta keep going.
No, I don't understand it. I think it's like pouty. It's like a toddler.
If I'm not going to be the best, then I'm not going to be here at all.
Yeah. If I don't win, I'm not going to do it at all. I don't like it. She retired from surfing before she'd even graduated from high school.
Jeez.
She graduated from high school in 1972, and that same year, she married a man named Steve Oberg after only 2 weeks of dating.
2 weeks and they got married.
Mm-hmm. She's 18.
Fool.
Yeah. Bad idea.
Real bad idea.
Real bad choices. Steve was an accountant, a surfer, and a pastor. The two of them moved to Kauai, Hawaii, where Margo became a surf instructor at a really popular resort. So they're like living their little life. I didn't know he was a pastor. I read that in a separate source from all of my other ones, but it made sense because he was Pentecostal and then she became Pentecostal.
Okay.
Which is a wild religion, sect of Christianity. And they spent whatever time they weren't surfing at church. And Margo was really into the community that church provided. She was, I wouldn't say shy, but sensitive. She was a really sensitive person. Hence the reason why I think after she lost, she was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because she can't, like, take loss or criticism. So she had decided not to surf at all, right? Then, in 1975, a really popular surfing brand at the time called Lightning Bolt came knocking on her door, and they offered to sponsor her with a real sweet contract if she agreed to return to competition. So during the time that she had been spending away from competition, she had really improved her surfing. And she had become a big wave rider, which basically no woman had been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the Encyclopedia of Surfing described her style this way. She rode in a function-first style, crouched and ready, arms spread evenly. She was aggressive in her choice of maneuvers, but stayed within herself and rarely fell. She excelled in waves up to 15 feet.
That's pretty tight.
Yeah, it was those are big waves for the time.
Those are huge.
After coming out of retirement, Margo went into her first contest in 1974 in Malibu, where she surfed against Mary Lou Drummy and Jericho Poplar, both of whom were really powerhouse surfers at the time, and she handily won against them. With her confidence back, she actually entered a men's contest in 1975 alongside 6 other women. It was called the Smirnoff Men's Contest.
Okay.
Fred Hemmings.
Like Smirnoff the booze?
Yeah, like
Okay.
Smirnoff vodka. Fred Hemmings was the contest organizer, and he was also a world champion surfer. They ended up being like lifelong friends because they won basically all of the titles. He won for men's and she won for women's. So he was the one who was putting on this particular men's contest, and he allowed these 6 women to enter the contest. And what he did is he placed one woman in each one of the heats.
Okay.
And Margo walked away with 3rd place overall.
Nice.
And she obviously won the women's. And she won another $1,000.
That's awesome.
But I thought that was pretty cool that she placed 3rd overall, meaning that there were only 2 other people better than her in the whole contest, and they were men. Here's where I'm going to pause briefly to talk about how surfing contests are judged, because it occurred to me that I had no idea.
Yeah, actually, I don't really know.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, she's winning all of these things, but how?
What is she doing?
Like, what does that mean? So some of the things that make judging surfing really difficult is that there is no even playing field, right? Like if you were doing any other sport, everybody has the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
They're on the same field, they're in the same pool, they're doing the same activity, they're on the same track.
Mm-hmm.
But in the water, in the ocean, it's unpredictable. Every wave is different.
Mm-hmm.
So that obviously can really affect how things are judged. And no 2 surfers get the same size of wave, and it's really hard to say who did it better. So they had to come up with a way to judge surfing, knowing that everything is different for every person. So I'm going to quote a lot from a book called Girl in the Curl, A Century of Women in Surfing by Andrea Gabbard. So each contest is a series of elimination heats, like kind of like track.
Okay.
Like in the 100, everybody enters the 100. So there's usually like 5 heats of like 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
And to get to the final 7, whoever has the best time of each heat. So in surfing, there are usually around 4 athletes per heat. So there are 4 people surfing at the same time. Sometimes there are only 2 of them. Surfers get out into the water, and then a horn is blown, and that's when competition begins. And they're given a certain amount of time in the water to execute as much as they want.
Huh.
So I watched one.
That's really freeform.
It kind of is, right? They're given this set amount of time, and it can vary depending on the conditions or the kind of contest. So one of the ones I watched Margo in, every heat was 45 minutes.
That is a long-ass time.
That's a long time to be out in the water.
Yeah.
But then, like, children's stuff will be, like, 10 minutes.
Well, yeah, you don't want those babies out there too long.
Right. I mean, like, they'll even do, like, 5 minutes. So it really just depends on the contest itself, what they're going to how long they're going to be out there. But every time they get into the water, there's a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And in that amount of time, they have to try to catch waves and do their tricks. So in the 1970s, there was a point system that allowed each surfer to get a certain amount of points for each maneuver. And then there was like this formula where they would multiply it by the wave size. And I'm sure that was a fucking mess, and it was super subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't actually measure the wave from the shore.
No. Oh, well, aren't the judges on boards out in the water?
No.
Oh, they're on the shore.
There's 5 judges, and they sit like next to each other in chairs with like an umbrella, and they watch from the side, like from the shore.
Okay.
And there are people on boards and in boats out there, usually camera people and rescue folks.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's about it. In 1982, surfers decided to create their own association, and they banded together and demanded a more objective rule and scoring system, which makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was much better. It was revised again in 2000. I don't know if it's been revised again since then. That's the information I got was only up until like 2010. So it is a little more objective now, but it is still a pretty subjective sport in terms of scoring.
Okay.
So basically, surfers are still judged on points from 0 to 10. 5 judges score them based on the difficulty of their maneuvers in what's called the most critical part of the wave. So when you think about like a big wave, you know, it comes up to crest and then it turns into whitewater.
Mm-hmm.
So the critical part is right before it crests. So you want to get as many maneuvers in that critical part before it crashes. And that is like the difficulty of the maneuver, the amount of time you can stay in the critical part of the wave. So like some people can just continue to ride along that critical part, and that's worth a lot more points. So you also have to show style, power, and speed, and you have to maintain control. So you're scored for innovative moves, for difficulty, control, and being in the critical part of the wave. There's so many factors.
It's a lot.
It's like gymnastics. That's the only thing I could think of.
Don't forget to smile.
Like in gymnastics, like how much stuff you have to fucking like think about.
Yeah.
When you're like the amount of scoring, it's crazy. So I'm going to pause Margo's story again to show you a video of the 1975 Hang Ten International Women's Pro Surfing Championships. Ooh, that was a mouthful. Margo competed in this and she won it. So I'm wanting you to take a look at how she surfs, and then we'll have you describe it a little bit. And then also there's something else in the video that I think you'll notice right away.
Okay.
Before we get to the obvious thing that I want you to comment on,
Yes.
I just want you to just tell our listeners, you saw a little bit of Margo surfing. What did it look like?
Yeah, just maneuvering. Looked like she was pretty... you could see she could see her path before she was doing it. She can read the waves really well.
Yeah, and she does this cutback thing where she continues to be able to ride in the center of that wave in that critical part that they get judged on. So she's really talented in that regard.
Yeah, she has a lot of control, which is great. I mean, the waves aren't as big as I thought they would be.
Yeah, they were a little small.
Those were a little small, but still, I mean, being able to, she edged somebody out. Like you could see, like they're all competing for that same spot. And so I know it's harder than it looks.
So besides Margo, what else did you notice in that video?
Just a lot of sunny buns.
There were a lot of ass cheeks hanging out.
Yeah, like half an ass was out.
Or a full ass in one case.
A full ass in one case. It seemed very much like, is that a style?
No. Let me tell you.
Because I saw one of the men was wearing a bodysuit.
That's right.
And then they were all wearing little swimmy bottoms with like a top.
Yeah. You noticed that, did you?
Yeah.
Why do you think that was?
Was that their uniform?
Yeah.
They had to wear it.
Basically, yeah. There were not outfits made for women surfers. Like you couldn't just go get like a wetsuit. Mm-hmm. So the reason I wanted you to see that is because I first started watching that and I was like, what the fuck am I watching? And like the commentator doesn't say anything.
Yeah, it was like a bunch of fluff. And the cheesy elevator music.
Oh, yeah. No,
was
that is like
weird.
in every one of those videos from the 70s of surfing. So, like, that was pretty normal.
Okay. It's awful.
But, like, it's like a sports commentator. And
She's like, and there goes Margo with all of her energy and might. It's like, okay, but are you describing what she's doing?
and then the camera would zoom in on someone's bare ass. And you're like, you're not going to comment on that? You're not going to say anything about the fact that we're just seeing a full moon here?
And also I was like, can I see the surfboard, please?
Yeah.
I just see a butthole.
Yeah. Like, Rita was at one point like, why am I seeing this? I can't even see the surfboard. It's just like a straight up close up of an ass. And I just want to point out that most of those surfers were like 18 and under.
Yeah.
Like, there was like 16-year-old girls with like
Yes.
their asses hanging out on national television. Not cool.
Not cool.
So just FYI, it wasn't until the 1990s when pro surfer Lisa Anderson teamed up with Roxy to create actual surfing costumes for women.
Wow. 1990?
Yeah, in the 90s.
Jesus.
When Lisa Anderson was like, fuck this shit, I want some rash guards.
Mm-hmm.
I want some wetsuits, and I want them to fit my body. You know, like, Margo was like 100 pounds.
Oh, wow.
She was like 5'2",
Petite.
100 pounds. Nothing that was meant for men would ever fit her.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't anything built for women. So,
There you go.
it reminded me of that Norwegian women's handball team.
Yeah.
And they were being like forced to wear bikini bottoms. And they were like,
they're
no,
we don't want to do this.
we want to wear shorts. And they got fined.
It's ridiculous.
I think Pink offered to pay their fine, which is pretty cool. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, like the fact that they were being fined because they wanted to wear shorts instead of bikini bottoms when it has nothing to do with their sport.
Yeah. It doesn't help the sport or not help the sport in any way.
Well, and in the case of this surfing competition, it was very clear that it was not helping.
No, the bottoms look just like wet paper. It's
Yeah,
like
they
you
were
look
just-
like you're wearing a diaper.
Falling straight off their asses. I mean, and like surfing is not, it's a very rough sport. You're in and out of the water. The waves are crashing. You have to have something that will stay on your body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, they didn't get it until the 90s.
Jeez.
So back to Margo dominating. So in 1977, the International Professional Surfers, or IPS, created a women's crown, and it was very obvious who would win that. And it was going to be the first professional surfing title for a woman in the world. And Margo was, of course, a shoo-in, and as predicted, she won. So she became, again, the first professional woman surfer. That same year, Margo opened up her own surf school on Kauai and ended up becoming the teacher and mentor for some future female surfing champions, which is pretty cool. 1977 was a real busy year for her. She also, in addition to opening up her school, she went on to win the Bells Beach contest along with the Coke and Brazil international competitions, and that made her the unofficial women's world champion.
Oh, wow.
The next year, in 1978, she won the Stubbies and Bells Beach contest, which were two of the most important surfing competitions, and they're held in Australia. It reminds me of like the, like in horse racing.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they're the Triple Crown?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that. There are
Okay.
3 really important surfing competitions in Australia, and they're like the most important ones in the world. And she won 2 out of 3, like handily. And she also became she came in first in Surfer Magazine's poll of best surfers.
She's doing a clean sweep.
Yeah, she's like dominating, and the press likes to talk about her. So one of the things I found interesting is I read this really cool book that just came out in July of 2021. It's called Women on Waves, A Cultural History of Surfing. It came out in July of 2021. And that guy, the writer of that, talks about how, there were other women who were doing really cool things in surfing and were on the same level as her, but they didn't get the same media attention. And in fact, one of them was this woman named, I think, Wendy, not Buford, but something like that. And I looked her up. I couldn't find a single fucking thing about her.
Oh, geez.
So, it is kind of sad that like there were other women in the same class as her, but there can only be one woman at a time. So Margo was the one who got to be the golden girl, right? You'd think that was enough for her.
No.
But Margo still was quite a sore loser, even after all these years and all of these wins. In the 1978 season, she was battling hard against another female surfer on the competition circuit, and her name was Lynn Boyer. And her and Lynn were like flipping back and forth. Margo would win first, then Lynn would win first, then Margo would win first, then Lynn would win first. So the most important competition at the end of the season, during the surfing competition, Margo's leash broke.
Oh no!
You know, that holds her surfboard, and so she ended up having to be swimming in the water after her surfboard, and Lynn ended up getting first. So she pouted for an entire year and didn't compete in the 79
Oh my gosh.
season.
I wonder if it had to do with because when she was so young, she was just winning. And so.
But she still is.
I know she is, but she just has this mentality of like, nope, I want it all or nothing.
And by this point, she was born in 1953 and it's 1979. I mean, she's a grown-ass woman. And she's still like, I lost. I'm not going to compete this year. And maybe that's not exactly how it went down, but that's certainly the way it was portrayed in all of the books that I read. So Margo came back real strong in 1980, and she won back-to-back world championships in 80 and 81. And if I've done my math correctly, I think Margo was pregnant when she won the world championship in 1981.
Oh.
Because she gave birth to her first son, Shane, in September of 1982. And just 3 months after giving birth, and while still nursing, she competed in and came in second at the World Cup in Hawaii. I'm so sorry. I totally butchered the name of that. So I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Nursing, just had a baby.
Yeah.
Win the World Cup.
Having it all.
And then she won the World Cup again in 1983 and came in second in 1984. And it meant that, you know, she was so dominant. Like, she just won everything all the time.
Yeah.
That she was kind of isolated and she didn't really make very good friends. She said this about her time as a champion. I was really sensitive. I wanted this big camaraderie, but I also wanted to win. When you win, people find fault. They say, oh, she just wins because she's a wave hog. Or she's too aggressive. I used to think, how can I win if I'm not aggressive?
True story.
It made me think of that double standard of a boss.
Yeah.
You know, we want bosses that are assertive and authoritative and like they get shit done and they do this and that and the other thing. And then like when we see that in a woman boss, it's often like,
yeah, who does she think she is?
Who does she think? Yeah, who does she think she is? And that's kind of what was happening to her. However, she was pretty well known as also being pretty arrogant.
No.
And
sometimes not the best look on people.
But I'm like, also like she had a reason to be arrogant. Like,
yeah.
I mean, she was basically untouchable. I don't know. It seemed like, you know, she's the world champion like 5 times.
So she has some room to brag.
And so she said this though about like the way that she felt about this. The cruel part is that everyone was nice to my face, and then I'd hear things from other people about the negative comments they made about me behind my back. I could ride the waves and paddle hard, so I caught a lot of waves and a lot of flack. The backstabbing made for a really lonely time. Steve and I were Pentecostal, so when he traveled with me, we'd seek out a church for fellowship. I didn't care about the doctrine that much. I just liked the fellowship. And Steve also became her surfing coach.
Nice.
Is it?
You don't like that situation?
I just am like, okay, so she's isolated from all of the women who surf.
Mm-hmm.
She's not friends with any of them. He's her only coach. He's her only friend. They go to his church. Seems not great. I mean, I just got a vibe from it that I didn't like. I can't really, like, I have no proof that anything was, like, weird. It just seems weird to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that he might have had maybe some kind of control.
Yeah, I absolutely felt like he seems controlling. Or at least at that time, perhaps, was. Because it's like, it doesn't make sense that he was her surfing coach.
It's like that, what was that one lady's name that she was the diver? And her husband, who was way older than her, was her coach.
Yeah. She was Filipina.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, her name is escaping me right now. Manolo, I think was her last name. Yeah, it just was like, it just rubbed me a little bit the wrong way. Like how isolated she was. Mm-hmm. That, you know, and also like they live in Kauai.
Yeah.
You know, her family's in California. His family's in California. Like they're completely separated from everybody. So I just felt like that felt a little weird. Margo gave birth to her second son, Jason, in 1987, and she took the season off. Seems reasonable.
That's all right, yeah.
Then she came back to win second at the World's Cup in 1988, and then she came in fourth at the 1991 World Cup, which is her lowest score.
I was going to say, she probably didn't like that one.
That was her last year of competing.
Oh, like ever?
Yeah, basically, yeah. She decided to stop competing professionally. She continued to surf recreationally around Hawaii, but she no longer competed professionally. And actually, she became a sports commentator.
Oh, okay.
So she would work for, I think, NBC Sports and commented on just surfing competitions.
Hopefully
and stuff.
It's way better than the commentary that person did for her.
Right? Margo Oberg won the World Championships in 1968, 1977, 1980, and 1981. The most championships a woman had ever won, a record that stood for almost a quarter of a century.
Wow.
In 1991, which is the year she retired, she was inducted into the International Surfing Hall of Fame and was the Woman of the Year in 1995 for the Surfing Walk of Fame, which also honored her with a star at Huntington Beach. In 2000, she was listed 99th in Sports Illustrated's top list of the top 100 women athletes of the 20th century. And in 2001, she was inducted into the Hawaii's Hall of Fame. And the most important one that she won is in 2018. She received the Silver Surfer Award, which is a Lifetime Achievement Award from the California Surf Museum.
That is awesome.
In addition to running her school and raising 2 children, Margo also wrote a chapter in the book Competitive Surfing called Strategies for Women. When Margo was asked in 2000 who her all-time favorite surfer was, she said, "Probably me."
I knew she's going to say that.
I kind of love that answer.
Yeah. Why not?
She's like, well, I was the best.
Yeah.
Why couldn't it be me?
Yes.
I was doing all the things. And then she told a little story. She said, as a young girl, I would tell myself, I'm going to surf until I'm 16. Then I'll be a regular girl. I kept looking forward to the day when I would be 16 and able to wear pretty party dresses and hang out with cute guys. I was going to be a normal girl. But it never happened. And now I'm glad about it.
It's weird that she says normal and regular,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, because she was doing something exceptional and extraordinary. Mm-hmm. She was not either of those things, regular or normal. Margo continued to run her surfing school for many years. Google shows me that it is now permanently closed.
Oh.
But the reviews online date all the way up to 2014. So I think that it was open until probably late 2014 or early 2015.
Okay.
And that meant she was 60 years old.
Oh, jeez.
I also did a bit of social media sleuthing, and it seems as though Margo and Steve Oberg eventually divorced. Seems like sometime in the aughts.
Okay.
It seems, based on my intrusion into their privacy, that Steve likely remarried. But I couldn't find anything about Margo or what she's doing today. Like nothing past like 2016. I know that she won that award in 2018, but I've got nothing else.
Probably just became a normal person.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, like, I couldn't even find a picture. I mean, like I said, I did some social media sleuthing. I couldn't even find a current day picture of her with her kids. So that also raised a little bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Why aren't you in any of your kids' photos? Because their dad is.
Oh.
And she is not.
Interesting.
My hope is that she is still riding some big waves at Sunset Beach at the age of 68. Margo Oberg changed the entire concept of surfing for women and proved that women could, in fact, be big wave riders. I always think that women athletes should not be compared to men because I think that's stupid.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, well, she's as good as a man, so therefore she's worth it.
Yeah.
But it does continue to be the bar that women are expected to either meet or surpass or get compared to. And she did meet that bar. Like, very famous male surfers and others compared her to men and said she's as good or better than most men. She was a force to be reckoned with, obviously, and her greatness will be admired by surfers probably to the end of time. She broke barriers in the surfing world and helped usher in some of the heroes that the surfing world looks up to today, like Lisa Anderson, who helped knock down the beach bunny image and created real clothing for women who surf. And, I don't know if you've heard of her, Maya Gabera?
Haven't.
She, in 2020, very recently, set the world record for riding a 73.5-foot wave in Portugal.
Oh my gosh. That'd kill ya.
Oh, I'm going to show it to you after we get done because it's insane.
Jesus.
I gasped. Because those are the kinds of waves you can't ride out to. Like, they take you out on like a jet ski and they drop you into it.
Jeez.
It was incredible. But she won the gold medal or the world record for it. She's in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Wow.
For having ridden the largest wave in the history of the world. And she's a woman. And without somebody like Margo Godfrey Oberg, who paved the way for big riders, maybe Maya Gabera wouldn't have been able to do that. So
that
long live Margo.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hope so. Those videos were always a little bit wild to watch. So I'm going to tell you a bit about my sources because I really loved the stuff I did. I ended up buying Jim Kempton's book, which came out in July, called Women on Waves, A Cultural History of Surfing. I used Wikipedia a little bit. A book that was written in 2000 called Girl in the Curl, which I mentioned earlier, A Century of Women in Surfing by Andrea Gabbard. In 2002, a book called A to Z of American Women in Sports by Paula Edelson. A biography of her on historyofwomensurfing.com, a bio as well on surfline.com, a chapter from a book called Women in Sports, the complete book on the world's greatest female athletes by a man named Joseph Layden in 1997. And there was a really cool radio story interview with the author of Women on Waves. And there was some really cool stuff about the history of surfing in that interview. And it was it's a show called Press Play with Madeline Brand. And the title of the piece that they did was called Women Have Conquered Surfing Since the 1600s, from Polynesian Princesses to World Record Holder Maya Gabera. And Chronicling Women Wave Riders Throughout History by Dashiell Pearson for Surfline. And then the two videos that I used were from the Encyclopedia of Surfing's Vimeo channel.
Some great resources.
Yeah, there were a lot because all of them were small. Like, it would be like, oh, here's 4 paragraphs on her. Here's 2. Here's 3. Like, I was like, oh my God, I have to read everything on the internet. Every book that was ever written to be able to gather together enough evidence, like enough research for her.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot. I guess I never really thought about women paving the way in surfing.
I literally was like, what's a sport that we haven't talked about yet? And that was the first one that came to mind.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that the current world record holder for the largest wave is a woman.
Yes. I can't wait to see the video.
Oh, it's wild. And she's Brazilian.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was really into her. Because I have an affinity for Brazil, so I was really excited to see her whole thing.
Very good. Loved it.
Thanks. I loved it too. And now we did it on our new equipment, even though it's drooping. I will figure that out.
Bear with us, folks. The editing might be a little tricky on this one because Amanda was going to murder their mic.
Yeah. So, Lucas, thank you so much for editing our show. We really appreciate it, especially
thank you,
this
Lucas.
week.
This one's going to be rough.
And thank you all for listening.
And also thank you to Jennifer Finch, who provides our lovely theme music at the beginning.
And don't forget to become our Patreon subscriber.
Please, pretty please.
Yes, please.
All right, till next time, folks.
Till next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Here is Margo Godfrey. As you can see, Margo's got a very lithe build. She only weighs about 100 pounds. Very, very tough. And fact, a lot of the fellas who watch her surf admire her ability so much they actually stand and watch her, and they pay her the highest compliment by saying when she's way out, you can't tell the difference between Margo and a man surfing. And she's doing a whale of a job of riding this one. Best ride of the day for Margo Godfrey.